Hello and welcome to my channel, The Way What Is Truth. Remember to like and subscribe and to comment down below. Now today I would just like to talk a little bit about humour. Because as human beings need to laugh, we need to smile. It's a part of who we are. God also has a sense of humour and he laughs and he smiles. But his sense of humour, and when he smiles and when he laughs, it's perfect. Whereas we, unfortunately, mankind as a whole, we tend to laugh about things that aren't that funny. Sometimes people laugh at people swearing, people laugh at using God's name as a cuss word. They laugh at people who mock religion and mock the Bible. I'm not going to name names or anything, but yeah, unfortunately, the world's humour and what the world finds funny, the world has a humour that's quite tacky, it's quite vulgar, it's quite what's the word I'm looking for? It's quite a secular, anti-religious humour that tends to mock religion. Obviously, not all comedians do that, but a lot of them do. So yes, as Christians should have a sense of humour, but not the corny sort of cringy. There's a kind of Christian humour that's so wholesome that it's a bit cringy. I'm not talking about that kind of humour. But let me give you an example. I find animals so funny. Animals, cats for example, are just an endless source of amusement to me. I mean, all my cat has to do, Sylvester, is jump up next to me and just stare at me with his slightly wonky smile because he's got a tooth missing, you see. That's why I call him the snaggle-toothed gentleman. That's my nickname for him, right? And I just find him absolutely hilarious. And that's just by being a natural, beautiful cat. I find most animals to be humorous and funny to some degree or another. I find owls quite amusing, for example. I find rabbits absolutely hilarious, especially when they do that binky and they jump and then spin in the air. That's absolutely hilarious. Have you ever seen the face of an alpaca? If you haven't, then look at the face of an alpaca and tell me that God does not have a sense of humour. He most certainly does. And he expresses his sense of humour with his weird and wonderful and beautiful creation. You'll find that a lot. Sometimes when I've been up to Brookfields, there's an aquarium there, and when I look at certain fish, especially those fish with the eyes that bulge out, they look so funny, and it's all a part of the beauty of God's creation. And oftentimes you will see humour. You will also see majesty and greatness in God's creation. When you look at lions, for example, and bears, that's the majestic side of God's creative genius. And when you look at other animals that are cuter, and alpacas, rabbits, raccoons. Do you know a raccoon when they stand on their hind legs and they've got those dexterous little hands and they steal things and then run off whilst they're nibbling on the food that they've just stolen? That's absolutely hilarious. That's just another example. I could give you loads of examples, and it's marvellous. That's the kind of humour God's got. That doesn't mean to say he's laughing at his animals. He's not laughing at them. He's laughing with them. Because God is a creative genius. Now, the humour that the world has, as I said earlier on, is often tacky. It's often very vulgar. The world makes fun and makes light and makes a comedy out of our less than perfect sexual behaviour, for example. The world laughs at things and smiles at things that God does not want us to laugh at, because there's nothing funny about a lot of what people find funny. Now, most humour tends to be quite neutral. Obviously, the vast majority of comedians are not Christians, obviously, but that doesn't mean to say that they're not funny just because they're not Christians. But there are some very insulting, very arrogant and very ignorant comedians out there. I'm not going to name names or anything, but I've seen clips of the sort of stuff they come out with, and it's uncalled for. It would be very similar to if a Christian was to go up on stage and make fun of atheists and insult atheism and the intelligence of atheists. Most Christians, thankfully, don't do that, but that's what so many atheists are doing and so many secular types are doing, and they call that comedy. It's not comedy, it's called being ignorant, and it's called being a fool. Okay? Proper civilised, cultured people respect other people's beliefs, so they don't make light of what other people believe in. Now, some of the things I find funny is Only Fools and Horses. I'm not a huge fan of Only Fools and Horses. I've watched most of the episodes. It's a bit of a blokey kind of comedy. It tends to appeal more to guys than it does to women. But there's some great actors in it, including Nicholas Lyndhurst. He's an absolutely great actor. The actor who played Rodney Trotter. Very, very clever guy and a really brilliant actor. Some of his acting is so poignant in some of the episodes. It's just unbelievable how great he is. And then there's other comedians like, other comedies, I meant to say, like Keeping Up Appearances. I quite like that as well. But probably my favourite one out of all of the English comedies would be Fawlty Towers. John Cleese is an absolute genius. You see, that's an example of good, clean, proper humour. There's good humour and then there's bad humour. I'm telling you that not everything that we laugh at is funny. You know, take The Simpsons, for example. That was at its best from the late 80s. I think it was 1989 or 1990 when The Simpsons first came onto the world stage, and it became an absolute world sensation, okay? The amount of merchandise that The Simpsons sold, unbelievable, even to this day. And although after the year 2000, the quality of the writing went downhill with The Simpsons, okay, because a lot of the old script writers left, and the quality of the writing and the timing of the lines that the various characters would come out with went downhill. So The Simpsons after the year 2000 just went down. But it's still a well-respected, mainstream, funny cartoon, but not as quality as it was before the year 2000, okay? In fact, a lot of Simpsons episodes are quite... I've seen a few episodes that I don't like. They just make light of Christianity. I don't know what to think about Ned Flanders. I mean, in some episodes it's okay, but then they make fun of Christians and the church. Mind you, The Simpsons makes fun of a lot of things, not just religion and the church. But yeah, I mean, some episodes are just so stupid and silly and over the top and so ridiculous. Yeah, so that's just one example. Yeah, so I do like The Simpsons, but I prefer the episodes that came out before the year 2000. Some episodes are better than others, that's just how it is. Other cartoons I've tried to like Family Guy, for example, but the thing with Family Guy is that it's got a lot of tacky humour, a lot of over-the-top ultra-violence, and it's not really that great. I did like King of the Hill, though. That's a much older cartoon. King of the Hill, that was really, really good. Futurama, most of the episodes I liked them. Some episodes didn't make a lot of sense, whatever. But yeah, Futurama is pretty good for the most part. But yeah, sometimes humour is what we make of it. And to the pure, and don't forget something. To the pure, all things are pure. Sometimes we can see things and laugh at things, and we don't really understand the true depths of it. We don't always see why God might not like that. But if we find it funny in an innocent way, then God doesn't have a problem with that. He's very forgiving, he's very understanding, and he's very loving. But yeah, as Christians especially, we should be very careful what we're watching and what we think is funny, because a lot of the time, what we think is funny isn't actually, because a lot of it is blasphemous. In fact, we laugh at and smile at so many things that we think is harmless, but it's not, you know. So yeah, there's the world's humour, which often involves swearing, bad language, blasphemy, using God's name, as a cuss word. And it goes on and on and on. This cheap, tacky, worldly humour, this is quite vulgar and quite rude, which God wants us to have nothing to do with. And this good, proper, clean humour like Fawlty Towers. Most of the episodes of Only Fools and Horses are just fine. The Simpsons, especially from, before the year 2000, are really, really good as well. Futurama, I quite like that, but Fawlty Towers, there's some great old Italian comedies that I like as well. I forget the name of them, but Italy has some great actors in it, and Italian humour is very difficult to beat, but Fawlty Towers, yeah, that's really, 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 really good. I find it absolutely hilarious. Only 12 episodes, and John Cleese was talking about releasing a new series, a new Fawlty Towers series recently. Correct me if I'm wrong down below. But yeah, really, I just wanted to draw attention to the sort of things that I find funny, and feel free to tell me down below about the sort of things you find funny, the sort of humour you find to be funny. Okay. And yeah, we should have nothing to do with what the world sees as being funny. Okay. I find animals very, very amusing and very, very, very funny. I find squirrels funny. I find raccoons funny. Bears, not so much. Sometimes when I see people who get up close and personal with bears and sort of wrestle with them a little bit, I kind of find that funny. More so years ago than I do now. I just think they're taking their life into their hands, to be brutally honest with you, when they do stuff like that. I think that there are certain animals that need to be left in the wild. We need to keep a safe distance from them. But yeah, I find animals so funny. There's some exotic birds which look absolutely hilarious. Parrots look really, really funny. But a lot of God's creation has a certain... You'll notice when you look at God's creation, whether it's parrots, birds, all those different multicoloured exotic birds He's created, many kinds of fish, alpacas. This just to give you a few examples, okay? Lambs. Have you ever seen a baby lamb jumping up and down and like running up and down and like jumping around and everything, And deers. A baby deer is called a fawn. I find them really, really funny as well, but they're beautiful and they're cute as well. But so that's really the things that I find funny are animals. I always have done. Of course, I do find the more basic humour funny, like people slipping over in the snow and stuff like that, but that gets a bit boring after a while. Animals, for me, it's definitely animals. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Yeah, so that's my take on humour. We should ignore the world's version of what it finds funny, which is often tacky, blasphemous, and just in bad taste. In fact, there's lots of humour out there that atheists and Christians alike, and everyone in between, don't like. A lot of atheists don't like so-called atheist humour because we go over the top. They think, okay, they grab a Bible, open it up, they mock the Bible from start to finish. Okay, what's the purpose in that? Because when you look at it logically and rationally, even if it was true that the Bible was just absolute nonsense, let's say for argument's sake that the Bible was nonsense, it still wouldn't serve any purpose to open up its pages and to mock it from start to finish. I mean, it doesn't. You are just antagonising and insulting a huge group of people worldwide. There are many, many Christians worldwide, okay? And it would be very similar to if a Christian was to mock atheism and insult the intelligence of atheists. Thankfully, most Christians don't do that. I certainly never would. There have been times in the past when I've got embroiled in online debates and everything, but I know it's not worth it. As I've grown older, I've become... Well, I always was a calm, cool and collected character. I always used my head. I'm the sort of person that uses my head rather than my heart. I always have been like that. It's not that I don't have a heart, I do. I get very emotional about all sorts of things, but I tend to hide, or should I say not so much hide, but I tend to keep my emotions under control. I keep a lid on it because I tend to look at the bigger picture, you see. So yeah, I've got some very strong emotions, believe me, I do. But I don't let them get on top of me. Anyway, I hope and pray that you're all well. As usual, feel free to talk about anything you like down below, even something that's not related to this video. If there's anything you want me to pray about, then I'll pray about it with you. And yeah, I'd love to hear anybody's opinions about humour and comedy in general. Perhaps you'd like to talk about some comedians that you know, perhaps some Christian comedians, hopefully not ones that are too cringy, because I do know that some Christian comedians are so wholesome that it actually becomes cringy. Yeah, it really, really does. So yeah, I mean, in this world there are comedians, there's funny cartoons, there's funny films that we can watch, and not all comedians and funny actors that we see on TV and so on and so forth, not all of them are Christians, okay? We are allowed to laugh at actors and comedians who aren't Christians. It's not about, this video is not about saying we should put all comedy and all things that are funny, that have been produced and done by non-Christians into our box and call it blasphemy. No, I'm not saying that, but we need to be careful, we need to be discerning, okay? And yes, bye-bye and take care.